One question. 3 seemingly simple words. Yet this very question has challenged, inspired, and haunted humanity for thousands of years. It is the foundation of awareness, the heart of interpersonal transformation, the through line of conscious evolution, and the birthplace of spiritual awakening. If you were one of the millions of people who have ever felt lost, have ever questioned your place in the world, have ever questioned the world around you, if you're one of those who has wondered why, despite all of your efforts, something still feels incomplete, somehow lacking, or even broken, then you are not alone. For you are one of the billions of people who have dared ask the most important question a human being can ask themselves in a lifetime. So join us as we explore this very question that has the power to change our entire lives. Who am I? It's like I had this giant hole inside of me. I just keep trying to fill it up with everything. I can't fill it up. You want to know the truth? I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am. Do you know what that's like? That was me, many years ago, acting in a film that I wrote and produced and directed because I was a starving artist at that time, and I couldn't pay anyone else to do those jobs for me. Plus, I was very specific and arrogant about my vision for the script, so there's that too. I didn't know on that day it was going to become one of the most important days of my life. See, I wrote the film specifically from a memory, and it was a memory of something that I had witnessed. I had witnessed someone go through a profound experience. And so later on, I wrote this film about it, shot the film, put the story into motion. Now, on the day of this scene, I didn't really know what to expect, but I surrendered everything, and I silently said a prayer asking for help. And on the third take of this scene, I went into what many creatives would call an emotional blackout, a creative blackout. Athletes call it in the zone. Psychologists would just talk about the subconscious. Whatever it was, I broke from the script and surrendered everything. And JC, one of the actors there, I made eye contact with him, and something about him touched something deep inside of me. And it pulled out of me something that I had not written and thought about for this character. It was nowhere on my mind at all. And he pulled it out of me, and what came out was a break from the script, where I looked over and said, I don't know who I am, Do you know what that's like? And I fell apart. And I fell apart because it would go on to be one of the most significant and most powerful moments in my entire life. And the reason it was so powerful is because it was true. It was the truth about me at that time, in that moment. It was absolutely true. I didn't know who I was. No clue. Had no clue that I didn't even know who I was. Certainly didn't know how to go about figuring that out. That would come much later. But in that moment, on that day, that man looked at me with a face and eyes and depth and soul, and it reached down into me, into my subconscious, into my heart, into my soul, and pulled out the truth. That's the power of art. That's the power of human interaction, interpersonal relationships. He just had this look of this sadness, but not. It was empathy, right? Like a mother who's looking at her sick child that she knows she can't help. And for whatever reason, in that moment, it touched that part of me. Because see, before that, really as long as I could remember, but certainly throughout my teens and 20s up to that point, I had struggled with depression, anxiety. I was using alcohol to alleviate those things occasionally at that time. And I always had this existential dread that was just at the pit of me. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know why. I didn't even know what it was. I just could not get whatever this mysterious hole was inside of me to fill up, which is what I later said in the film. And I knew there was something. It was capital T truth about that moment. And it was only much later that I really understood exactly what was going on there. Now today, looking back, having been through recovery, therapy, different therapists at different times, different healers in different areas, I now see why so many of these practices don't eventually work the way that we want them to. I see why therapy sometimes does fail, although it's incredible. I start to see why recovery, amazing as it is, saved my life, but why recovery for some is so incredibly hard. And things started to click into place for me because that day I was given a gift. I was given a question, and I was given a mission to find out what the answer to that question was. And now, 15 or so years later, I have that question as the foundation of my private practice that I use to help other people with their depression, their anxiety, their substance use, their spiritual issues, their awakening, all of the things that I've struggled with my entire life. And this channel is meant to be a foray into that for other people because I know from my own private practice, but before recovery rooms, recovery meetings, therapy rooms, group therapy rooms, doing modalities from healers and tropical jungles and all of it. Why do we have all of these tools, these modalities, these therapies? Why do we have all of these things, yet somehow we as a people, we as a population, we as individuals, we as souls still suffer so much? It was the core of the Buddha's search. He left an entire life of privilege and wealth because it couldn't understand the heart of this question. And I'm not saying that I do either, of course. All I am saying is that I'm further along on that journey than I was on that day. And now I passionately spend my life trying to help others do the same. It's the only thing in my life outside of the love I have for the people in my life that has actually managed to fill that hole inside of me somewhat. And so that's why we're here. We're starting to answer this question of what is justice? What is justice in the world? What is justice between us as individuals? What is justice within ourselves? And we're going to ask that question. And we're going to come together, hopefully as a community, if anybody watches this. And we're going to start to talk to each other about what it means to be made whole, what it means to heal, what it means to take one another by the hand, even if it's through tears, and dare to say, let's walk each other back home, wherever that may be. But in order to do that, we have to have a foundation. We have to have a common place that we can lie, that we can begin to build. Because I noticed in the early years of my own private practice, I started to see where so many of these other things failed. And that's not because they're not great tools or great modalities or great perspectives. It's because they start in the wrong place. They're not starting at the beginning. They're not starting at that question that hit me that day. They're starting way above that. Somebody comes in, tell me why you're here. I got this, I got this. Okay, great. How's that acting in your life? Well, I have this, so then this happens. I feel this way, and then I go and do this, and my life's a mess, whatever. Okay, well, in most of those disciplines, it's, okay, well, let's look at that problem, and go to work on that problem, then go to work. But that begs the question, is it the problem itself? Is it, whatever the addiction or whatever, the malaise, whatever, the existential dread, depression, anxiety, obsessiveness, heartbreak? They come in answering a question about the malady they face and saying, I this, I that, I this, I that. But who is the I that's experiencing that? I didn't know. And as I came to very soon find out, most everyone else does not know that either. Because I began to ask them the most important question that you can ever ask yourself, which is, who am I? This is the exact question that spiritual seekers, mystics, sages, philosophers, theologians, and everyday people have asked for centuries. And when we begin to strip away the layers of identity, something profound happens. We begin to question. We go within. And before we know it, we begin to awaken. Most of us go through life assuming we know who we are. We say, I'm a mother, I'm a farmer, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm funny, I'm cute. We define ourselves by these roles, achievements, characteristics, past experiences, memory. But those are just layers. They are not the essence of who we are. At any moment, those qualities, those roles could shift and change, and perhaps even be gone forever. If we lost a job, a child, when the memories begin to fade, would we still exist? This must mean that the true essence of who we are does not end with roles and jobs, does not end with relationships crumbling. It does not end in retirement. In fact, maybe it doesn't end at all. No, we are something far deeper, far more mysterious than all of these qualities of life. The psychological question of who am I explores the nature of self-identity, how it forms, and how it influences our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. It invites us to examine the components of the self, including our personality, values, roles, relationships, and sense of purpose. The philosophical question of who I am delves into the nature of self and identity, challenging us to explore the essence of being. It is a fundamental inquiry, philosophically, inviting reflection on personal identity, consciousness, and existence itself. This question is not just about defining oneself, but questioning the very concept of selfhood. It's an ongoing dialogue between us and our inner awareness and the world we inhabit. The spiritual question of who am I is a profound inquiry that invites deep self-reflection and exploration of our true nature. Beyond the superficial identities, it often arises in these spiritual traditions and philosophies as a way to investigate the essence of existence and selfhood. When we begin to combine all three of these different yet similar and overlapping frameworks, we begin to see commonalities. And these commonalities start building a pathway that we can travel to explore the essence of this question. So why is this the most important question that we will ever ask ourselves? We'll come back around to the answer to that question at the end of this series. But for now, I'm going to give you the same homework assignment that I've given to many of my clients, and it's the same homework assignment that I gave to myself first, which is this. Your homework, should you choose to accept it, is to take a notebook, a sheet of paper, preferably a journal that you're going to start keeping, and write at the top of it, who am I? And before you answer, you have to bear in mind two main rules. You cannot use a role that you play in life, father, mother, cousin, orthodontist, school teacher. You can't use a role because those roles can end at any time, and inevitably, on a long enough timeline, they will. But when those roles end, does that mean you fall over dead? You cease to exist? Second rule, you can't use any qualities or characteristics, right? I'm tall, I'm funny, people think I'm nice, people think I'm a jerk, I'm overweight, I'm in great shape, whatever. Qualities and characteristics, right? These are adjectives, they're great descriptors, but they're not who you are. They're just describing you in some way. And these things, not only are they completely subjective, but they can end or change at any time. And of course, when they change or end, do we cease to exist as well? No. Which means these things that we use to think of ourselves, to identify ourselves, to have an understanding of ourselves, they're great in that capacity. But is it really getting to the heart of the question of who we really are? So the homework at the top, Who am I? Question mark. And then go down on the page and just start writing. If you want to do it stream of consciousness, if you want to drop into a meditation or contemplation before, totally up to you. But go through and start writing. And preferably, you're starting a journal that we will keep throughout the entirety of the Inner Space series and perhaps even beyond. And so now, we start to take the first step into the answering of that question. But before we take that first step, we have to identify a framework for that question. This question doesn't just flow out into an infinite existence. There has to be some type of time and space framework, a foundation under which we can understand this question at all. What is that foundation? What is that framework? We'll get to that in the next video. See you there.